Thank you for attending the special meeting this evening, January 20th, 2022. And I'm going to roll call for attendance. Albert Yance. Here. David Harwood. Here. Melissa Pickett. Here. And Doug Matheson. Here. Okay, if you would, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right. One of the reasons for this special meeting was to have a discussion with Chief Aaron Miller in reference to dispatch. So I'm going to turn it over to Shane Fox and Chief Miller.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and your willingness to meet tonight. Apologize for kind of the urgency of this meeting, but I think Chief Miller will go into some details of why we're here and why we feel like this is a matter that we need to speak on now versus waiting until what was planned for the retreat. So once the retreat was postponed until mid-February, we felt like this conversation needed to have a chance to be discussed prior to that date to allow us all time to potentially move forward with any action that may be possible. So I'll allow Chief Miller to go into the details and the history of our current arrangement and then what has transpired recently with that arrangement. So thank you, Chief.
Okay, Mayor, members of council. I was here about 2 years ago, and we talked about changing our communications plan. And I thought at that time that this issue would not come up again for quite a while. But obviously, here we are again, and I apologize for that. 2 years ago, or it'll be 2 years ago this coming July, we entered into a new agreement with Boone Police Department, the town of Boone, to provide our communications services for us during the nighttime hours from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. During the daytime hours, after canceling our previous contract with the county, we were able to bring 2 people back into the Blowing Rock Police Department during the daytime hours from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and that's 7 days a week. That arrangement has went really, really well. We've been very happy with that. However, about the end of July, we received word that Boone, the town of Boone, was going to be having some conversations with Watauga County about a possible consolidation of their communications services. So we've sort of been in a holding pattern, waiting to see where that went, how that went. Last week at the Boontown Council meeting, the Boontown Council voted to move forward with some sort of consolidation with the county on their communications. It's added a little bit of urgency lately. When they began these discussions in late summer, early fall, the town of Boone, and I'm not sure about the county, but the town of Boone decided that they were, in anticipation of this merger, they were not going to promote anyone into the vacant supervisors positions, and they weren't going to backfill any positions that they had come open. So over the course of several months, they've had several positions come open. Here lately, with those vacant positions, and throw COVID into the mix, there's been some staffing shortages with Town of Boone Communications. So recently, those staffing shortages have caused us to try to scramble and figure out how we at the town of Blowing Rock are going to cover our communications needs during the nighttime hours. And that's what's led to the urgency and prompted us to have this special meeting. We were hoping that this would make it to retreat and we would have a little bit more time to talk about it, but that's not the way it's worked out. So currently, like I said, we provide our own folks during the daytime hours. Boone has contracted to provide people during the nighttime hours. So moving forward, we've had several different arrangements now. None of those went really well for us. We seem to end up being pawns in some of these relationships and these deals. So moving forward, it's our recommendation to council that we just move forward with filling our own communications center in Blowing Rock 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that's our proposal to you. We would like to move forward with that sooner rather than later because of these shortages that we've been experiencing and not really sure what's in store for us from one day to the next with these staffing shortages. So that's where we're at. If we maintain our current level of service, we keep all the current positions that we have, and we add 2 additional positions to the Communications Center in Blowing Rock, it will add approximately $70,000 annually to the police department's budget. It takes 4.5 positions to cover our Communications Center 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we obviously already have 2 of those positions. The monies that we won't be paying, we've been currently paying the town of Boone $65,000 a year, which is what the contract was for. With the monies that we save from that contract, that will cover another position and part of the halftime position. So basically, we need the monies for 1 additional full-time position at Blowing Rock. And there's some additional monies that would have to be paid for some computer software and the maintenance of that software, that kind of thing, for our CAD and our mobile CAD systems. So that's our proposal to council, and I'll be happy to answer any questions or try to explain it better. Yes.
Chief, if you're granted this tonight, how long will it take you to be up and running?
My goal would be March the 1st. One of the things that we would have that may cause that to be delayed a little bit might be some of the transition with the computer software. We'll have to get Southern Software to come in and move some files, set up that new system in our department and that kind of thing. So, but March 1st would be my goal. For the remainder of those 4 months of this fiscal year, I think the cost to the town would be about $17,000 in additional salaries that we would come up with that would be required for a budget amendment for this current fiscal year.
So for this budget amendment, you're actually asking for actual money, $17,000.
That is correct. During this
And
fiscal
that's provided we don't have to pay the town of Boone any additional
That is
funds.
correct. I would assume that we would pay the town of Boone what we contracted with them to pay them for the months that they provided service. And when they stop providing service, whenever that date, if that date's March 1st or a little thereafter, then we would discontinue payments to the town of Boone.
Do you think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So we would actually just be switching the money from going to Boone to our police department for the rest of this year.
Right.
Would be a money transfer for that.
Right, and that's why I think we'll come up with, we'll be about $17,000 short, being able to cover everything for this fiscal year. Our software company has been great about working with us so that we won't have to come up with any additional monies this fiscal year. We can wait and budget those for the next fiscal year. Yes.
I've got 2 questions there. One, will the police department be open 24 hours a day, or are you going to keep it locked?
The front door is never locked at the police department, so it's unlocked 24 now, but there will be somebody behind the glass 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And in anticipation of this, do we not now own our licensure to operate?
We own the license, so there's multiple computer softwares that we use in the communication center. One is the computer aided dispatch, CAD for short. One is the mobile CAD that they use in their cars. We did purchase the licensing for CAD and during this fiscal year, so we do own that. That's an annual fee, though, that we pay each year. The licensing that we have not purchased yet is for the mobile CAD. But as I said, the vendor said that they would work with us and we wouldn't have to pay that until after July 1. They would invoice us in the new fiscal year for that and not this one.
I guess for Nicole, you want to tell us where that's going to come from so we'll know?
Nicole, did you hear the question?
Yeah, So I understand the question to be, where will the additional 17,000 come from for this fiscal year?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. My understanding would be, you know, and typically, I mean, I'm just, typically I have typically said for, you know, fund balance, usually for one-time allocation, you know, this is going to be a continued cost into next fiscal year. So typically you don't usually allocate fund balance towards recurring costs. However, I assume that we would be committing to making room in the budget next fiscal year to not have to have, you know, a fund balance allocation again. But my understanding is that the requested allocation would be 17,000 out of fund balance for this fiscal year.
Thank you.
For discussion, I'll go ahead and make a motion.
I do have a question real quick, if I may, Doug, and council. This situation with the town of Boone, was it COVID-driven?
It has been lately, yes.
So could funding not be used from the funds received from COVID, the 17,000? Just a thought. But that's something you could work on. Okay. Doug?
I'm talking that for the rest of the discussion. I'll go ahead and make a motion that we move forward with this.
I'll second.
Question,
Yes.
to be perfectly clear, this has nothing to do with 9/11.
That's correct.
Okay.
We currently do not answer the 911 telephone. We don't, that's the county's responsibility. Without rehashing all that history, we have never been a primary PSAP. So several years ago, when we turned that over to the county, so we haven't answered the 911 calls in many years.
Chief, I respect your recommendation. Out of curiosity, what are our other options, if any?
The other options would be to try to find somebody that would be willing to contract with us to take our services during the nighttime hours like the arrangement we currently have with Boone. I think that's certainly something we could explore. One of my hesitations in doing that is then, you know, we may find ourselves having to renegotiate this again at some point if that vendor, I'll use that term, if that vendor decides to do something different in the future, or the cost of that goes up substantially or something like that. And I'll just mention a couple of things that we're planning and we're working on is to try to figure out ways to offset some of these costs in the future. We've been talking already with some other agencies, some other companies in the area who might have a need of some dispatch services at night. So we're trying to see if we can actually find a partner or partners that could use our services at night. The other thing that we're looking at, and I don't want to get too far ahead of my skis, I was hoping to talk about all these issues at retreat and tie them together. But one issue that we'll be talking about at retreat is pay to park. If the council were to decide in the future to move forward with pay to park, we could also use those nighttime personnel to assist with some of the administrative duties that would be necessary if we went to a pay to park system. Some of the citation billing and things like that. So we've been trying to figure out ways to use these positions for other purposes as well and use their time as efficiently as we can.
Thank you.
And if I may, so I have spoken several times to the town of Boone. I also spoke today to the county manager, and the county manager wanted me to pass along the county would be willing to entertain us going back into potential a partnership with the county. He did mention they would like to see a multi-year contractual agreement prior to bringing in what we have now, the 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. We were at roughly $185,000, I believe, a year with the county, $65,000 with Boone. Mr. Geock, the county manager, passed along to me that they would be willing to meet somewhere in the middle if we went that route. But they would be looking for a multi-year contract obligation if we decided to go back to where we were prior to this move to the 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. So he did want me to share that with you all tonight.
Until we get up and running.
No, we did reach out, and Chief Miller, I think, has shared some back and forth, some communication with the county. No, this would be long-term, so they are interested in really only working with us on a long-term basis. The short-term, they have staffing issues as well, I've been told, at the county, and so I think there's concerns with taking on the town of Boone, which they are planning to consolidate with, along with the town of Blowing Rock. So when the town of Boone has their staffing shortages, those calls now turn over to the county, and the county has worked out an agreement with the town of Boone to handle those calls. Is that not correct?
That's my understanding.
And the town of Boone last week at their regular town council meeting did decide to move forward with consolidation with the county. So the county's willing to work with them at this point in a short-term, interim basis. But with us, they've offered a multi-year deal moving forward.
This is just a question, it has nothing to do with this really, but when I call 911, how does 911 get in touch with you?
What's been happening, and again, we're planning to have a meeting soon to discuss all the particulars, but what's been happening is, depending upon the nature of the call, Watauga County answers all the 911 calls. Watauga County has had two choices. They could pass that call on to Boone Police, who is also a primary PSAP. They also have 911 phones, and Boone could dispatch us during the day, night, whatever. Or on many occasions, the county, they have the capability to contact us directly over the radio. Many times the county just keys up the radio and gives us the call directly. And then once we get the initial call, then we communicate back and forth with our own dispatchers. So they still have all the capabilities in real time to hit the button on the radio and tell us where the emergency is and what we need to do. So
You probably get a good many of those, don't you?
I haven't looked at the numbers since the last time we went through this conversation, but 2 years ago, I think we averaged between 8 and 10 911 calls a month that came in for Blowing Rock Police, and some of those were might be multiple calls for the same incident. If you have an accident on the highway, there's probably going to be 3 or 4 people calling 911, so the number was really low at that time. Back to Mr. Fox's point, if we were to contract with the county, and they're saying that we would be somewhere in between 65,000 and 185,000, which that was a 2 years ago number. I would expect, had we stayed with the county, that number would be closer to 200,000 at least right now. So somewhere in between there, I would guess, would be at least $100,000. Well, $100,000 is 2 salaries. So if we're going to hire 2 people, if we're going to pay $100,000 in salaries, I would rather see those 2 people sitting in our police department answering our phone than sitting somewhere else.
Do you see it being an issue filling those 2 positions?
No, there's some qualified candidates that have already reached out to us that are interested in coming to work for the town of Blowing Rock. So I don't think that'll be difficult at all.
Call the vote.
Albert? David?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
And Doug?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you very
Motion
much.
passes.
Thank you,
Thank you, Chief. Thanks for your jumping onto this and spearheading it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be going into closed session and to discuss positive personnel issues. there might be a decision made once we reconvene, but we will ask you to leave, and you can stay in the lobby if you wish. David, would you read off the closure number for me?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to propose we go into closed session per North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11.A6 to consider